Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd first like to begin by offering my condolences to all of you as we commemorate the death anniversary, the Shahada anniversary of our beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And of course, my condolences and all of our condolences to the Imam of our time as well. I also want to thank the community, especially Sheikh Abdul Rahim, for the kind invitation. This is my first time in this community. I've been in Houston before, never in this masjid specifically, but I have been here frequently, and was hoping that one of these days I'd be able to serve. So alhamdulillah, it's a blessing and a tawfiq to be with all of you. There's so much now that we can say about Rasulullah's personality. There's so many aspects of his life. And obviously, we're relegated and constricted and restricted to 30, 45 minutes or so just to discuss some aspect of his life. When we look at the lives of all of the ma'sumeen, all of the members of the Ahlul Bayt, and even if you want to go and expand that and go back in time throughout all the prophets, there are a lot of themes that continue on through all of these divine personalities as well. There's positive themes and then there's negative themes as well too. And I want to discuss one of the negative themes tonight and try to connect it to something that you and I can hopefully take a lesson from as well. Given the current geopolitical situation, all the oppression that's happening overseas, especially the constant oppression, genocide of the Palestinians and many others throughout the world, more and more you see every year as time goes forward, Muslims, especially followers and lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, have this yearning and desire for the 12th Imam to return, to end this suffering and oppression that's been going on for so long. And we think that, just as many humans do, we think that we're an exception to the rule. We think that we're in unique times, that we're a unique people, a unique group of Muslims in an extraordinary situation, right? But any student of history should know that that's not the case. Yes, our psychology might tell us that we think we're unique, but our human history, our anthropology, our sociology, and the Quran would show us that no, human beings seem to be repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. One aspect of that is what? This almost inherent, innate trait in humans to do khiyana, to betray. And especially, not just one another, which happens, but especially when Allah sends His divine representatives, when He sends prophets. When the prophets appoint people after them to continue on the message. There's this constant theme of humans just betraying and betraying and betraying. But that betrayal doesn't happen in a vacuum. The humans first what? They're in a state where they recognize something's wrong with their lives. Whether it's individual, whether it's familial, whether it's societal, financial, spiritual, they recognize that there's some problem going on. They pray usually to God or to some higher power to come save us, to help us, deliver us from this issue, send us a savior. And Allah does, God does. He sent these saviors over and over and over again. And obviously we believe 124,000 prophets. He keeps sending them over and over again. With the final one being Rasulullah, of course. And every time, what happens? As He sends them down, in the beginning, maybe the mission with a few people, maybe His own family, or some people in that society they accepted. But the majority seem like they don't. And they end up betraying the Prophet, they abuse the Prophet, they yell at the Prophet, they stone the Prophet, and eventually many of these societies, they end up killing the Prophet as well too. Right? So the same theme of betrayal happens over and over and over again. Everybody keeps asking for them to save, give us a savior, show us some help, give us some guidance. Allah sends somebody, and then they betray that person, and that person, the Prophet, ends up dying and is usually killed by these individuals. And the Quran is full of these stories. I don't need to remind you. You're all students of the Quran. You've read these stories before. So you know that that's the main repeated story in the Quran, is the prophets coming, giving guidance, and then the people abusing them. It's the same sort of trait that happens. But it doesn't just end with even Rasulullah. It continues afterwards. As it's very clear by the teachings of Rasulullah that he mentioned that no, there will be imams and guides and leaders after me. So make sure you don't disobey them. Make sure you follow them. But we see that the same pattern of khiyana and betrayal happens afterwards too. Starting with the first imam, all the way up until the 12th imam as well, till right now. So this theme of betrayal exists everywhere. Now you and I, we're obviously praying constantly for the imam to return. But what happens is we think that we're different than everybody else in the past. Just like everybody else, even during the time of Rasulullah, before Rasulullah announced his prophethood, they were praying for somebody to come and save them too, especially the Jews of that time. They wanted somebody to come and save them. And when Allah announced the Risala and Nabuwa of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as we all know, they don't just readily accept him. His own family, his own close ones, the people that he's around in Makkah, everybody just betrays him. They call him crazy. They call him insane. They call him poet. They say that he's a magician. All these names they call him. They reject everything about him. And even amongst the people who eventually accept him, for a lot of them, in the back of their minds, they're thinking of ways to betray him so that they can gain power later on. Right? So this same theme was happening there too. And then what happens, even though Rasulullah is mentioning over and over again that after me, Ali will be the leader and the Khalifa and the Imam after me, and he will lead you, and he'll explain and continue explaining things just as I fully explained it to you. And initially people, they claimed they accepted, but as all of us know as well too, starting with Saqifa onwards, he was betrayed again. Right? And the same thing happens with every single Imam, that people seem like they need deliverance, najat, they want somebody to help them and save them, give them guidance and hidayah, but they end up betraying him. So now we should be honest and say, okay, I'm praying for a savior too. My family, I encourage them, recite dua faraj, pray for the Imam to come back. There's so many bad things in the world, pray for the Imam to come and save all of this, save everybody. Like, okay, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to have that yearning for the Imam to return, to pray for him. That's wonderful. But if everybody else in the past has been doing it, they've always been praying for somebody, to God, for Allah to send somebody. Allah does send them, and then what happens? They turn around and betray them. What makes you and I think that we're going to be any different? Why do we think that we're going to be on the right side of history instead of on the side of the enemies of the 12th Imam, with the Dajjal or Sufyani or any of these characters that will come towards the end of times? Why do we think that we're the exception to the rule, when the Quran and the history all seems to say that the majority of humans keep disobeying, they keep betraying? So what can we kind of learn from this and figure out? Let's discuss a bit more, inshallah, after a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So there's a lot of ways we can attack this problem to figure out what is the essential problem or trait or some of the issues, spiritual diseases that you and I might be suffering from. Right? There's a lot there. It's tough to say that there's one specific answer. But again, we're obviously short on time, so we have to figure out, where does it seem like that the Ahlul Bayt seem to have been maybe focusing? And especially since we're commemorating the Shahada of Rasulullah, is there something that maybe in some of his riwayat and some of the teachings, things that maybe you and I have heard over and over again, maybe a place that he has put some emphasis on? So that's what we want to focus on for tonight. Now, a lot of this goes back to this question of identity, which I know is a topic sometimes that maybe gets overdone at this point, the idea of having an identity crisis or suffering from an identity problem, especially for those of us born and raised in the Western society. That's never going to end. No matter how many times we discuss that, those of us who might be even, let's say, children of immigrants, those who are born and raised here, whatever it is, there is some level of us where we are outsiders. Now, it might be culturally, it might be religiously, it might be spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. There's a lot of different ways that we feel like outsiders. But it seems like the Ahlul Bayt had honed in and zoomed in and targeted one specific type of alienation that all of us should keep in the back of our minds. So let's go through that hadith, inshallah, and we'll explain it a bit more. So this hadith has been attributed, of course, to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, where he's reported to have said, رَأْسُ كُلَّ خَطِيَّةٍ حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا, that the beginning, the genesis, the inception, the start of every single sin, every single mistake, every single problem is what? حُبُّ الدُّنْيا. حُبُّ الدُّنْيا. I'm sure all of you have heard this phrase before, right? حُبُّ الدُّنْيا, right? Being in love or having love of this dunya and this material world. So we all heard this before. I'm sure speakers have talked about it. Assalamu alaikum. Speakers have discussed this in depth, I'm sure. So we have this idea in our mind about hubb dunya. It's a bad thing. We're not supposed to be in love with this world. But there could be a problem with that understanding too. As I'm sure many of you know, that with every understanding, whether it's a concept in the Quran, a concept in the riwayat, a concept that our ulama discuss. There's what we call the sort of zahiri, the superficial, surface level meaning, and then there's batini meanings as well too, the sort of inner, esoteric, the deeper understandings of some of these concepts. That sometimes we get to open up, sometimes we don't. So hubb dunya, I don't want to say we have an incorrect understanding, but sometimes we have a very simple understanding of what it means. So let's give some examples. So a lot of us, when we hear this phrase hubb dunya, that it's bad to be in love and have love for this world. So what comes to our mind? Usually we end up thinking about the items, the quote unquote paraphernalia of the dunya, right? That means, okay, nice houses, that's an item of the dunya, so that must be bad. Because if I have a nice house, that means hubb dunya, so I can't have that. Having a nice car, well, that's hubb dunya as well too, because I can't have those things. Having lots of money, well, money, root of all evil, right? So I can't do that. Clothes, especially nice clothes. Okay, that's from the dunya, that's got to be bad too. So we start in our minds sometimes going through little by little houses, cars, money, all of these things, and associating that with hubb dunya, and then keeping our distance from that and claiming that I'm a zahid now. I'm ascetic, that I'm a pure, irfani, deep spiritual person because I don't have any of these nice things. And sure, that might make sense if we have a misunderstanding of the riwayat, but that's not what hubb dunya means. Even at the surface level, that's not what it means. In fact, in many of our riwayat, the exact opposite has been mentioned for most of these things. Not cars, but for houses, for example. I don't want to go in depth over here. But for example, just to open up the discussion, for houses. Now, we don't really have riwayat that say have a nice, luxurious home, but we do have riwayat, and we do have recommendations from our ulama that say what? That it is, if possible, recommended to have a spacious home. Now, why would that be the case? Why would it be recommended to have a spacious home? And all of us would know. The reason many of us would want a spacious home is because we want to host. We want to have people over, invite them over just to feed them, invite them to have a majlis in our home, a milad, anything, right? Any way we can remember the Ahlul Bayt, remember Allah, recite the Quran, that's what we want to do. And you see that most people who have this true connection, this true iman, that's what they want. Whenever they're apartment or house shopping, what are they thinking about in the back of their mind? Yeah, maybe they're thinking about property taxes and school district and other secondary factors. But a lot of them, the main sort of priority is what? Can I actually hold a program over here? Can I have people over here or not? Can I host people? Will they be comfortable here? And some people even go out of their means to make sure that, as long as I can have the dhikr and remembrance of Imam Hussein in my apartment or home, that's good enough, even if it puts me in a bit of a financial predicament. So that is one of the recommendations that we do have, is to have a spacious home for that reason. There's other metaphysical reasons as well, but we don't have time to discuss that. But that's one discussion that the ulama open up. Now we have similar riwayat, which talk about having nice clothes. People had come to the imams, they had mentioned, there's this cheap shirt that I can buy, or I can buy, 10 cheap shirts for this price, or I can get one nice shirt for that same price. And I believe this was the hadith from maybe the 7th imam. He said, no, go with the higher quality shirt because that'll last you longer. So, God, we have many riwayat which don't tell us to be cheap necessarily, right? Which do push us to a direction where we're supposed to be sometimes going after what we might think is a luxury of the dunya, maybe. Right? And there's a whole philosophy to that, but that's not the main subject tonight. But I just want to make sure it sits in the back of our mind that I have to get rid of this idea that having nice things is bad. That's not the case. Even when it comes to money itself, money is not the root of all evil. Yes, it's the root of all evil for whom? For evil people. Evil people are able to engage in evil actions because they have money and they have resources. If you have somebody evil but they don't have the resources to do so, then all they are is just evil in their mind, right? But the opposite is also true too. You have somebody who has khair and good in their mind. They want to do a lot of good things, but they just don't have the resources. So they might get rewarded just for having the nice idea, but they don't have the means, the wasila to go about doing so. But those who can, they can invite people, they can host them, they can sponsor programs like this, for example, right? They can go for ziyarah, sponsor people for ziyarah. There's so many possibilities there because that they are using that risk that Allah has blessed them with. They're using that to, kind of share the wealth, so to speak. I know sometimes these like lefty discussions of redistribution of wealth seems like it's an un-Islamic concept, but there is an idea that we have over there, right? It's not exactly this commie version of it, but we do have this idea that Allah specifically puts risk, higher quote-unquote amounts within some people and lower amounts in others to see if those with higher amounts will redistribute according to the Sharia, according to the recommendations, And those with the lower amounts will have sabr and patience, waiting for real mu'mineen to be able to distribute it like that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this was just a short tangent, just to give us a reminder that no, it's not wrong to like things of the dunya. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's used for a good purpose, which we're going to explain a bit more. Okay, so what is a deeper, quote-unquote, understanding of hubb dunya then? If it's not about items or things or paraphernalia, ashya, then what else could it be? Another way that ulama have explained it, it said, don't think about the items of the dunya. Think about a different perspective. Think about the hadaf, the maqsad, the goal and the purpose of the dunya. Think about the natija, the nata'ij, the results, the athar, the effects of the dunya. Think about this nadam or nizam, the organization and the system of the dunya. Think about the objectives of the dunya. Think about what we call illiya, the system of causality of the dunya. These are concepts which some say is really being addressed when we come to hubb dunya. Okay, so what does all these fancy words mean in the first place, right? What are we talking about here? So let me explain it a little bit more. When we talk about goal and purpose, take Islam and put it aside for a second. A lot of times when you ask Muslims, like to answer these kind of questions, these personal questions, right? If I were to ask you right now, what's our goal in life? What's our purpose? All of you would give you that, you'd all give that Saturday, Sunday school answer, right? Like, oh, to get close to Allah, to please Allah, whatever. And that's cool, right? To get you 100 on your test, but that's not your real answer. What is our actual goal and purpose in life? Again, just be honest. Put Islam to the side. It's going to be the same answer that non-Muslims will give too. What do all of us want? We just want to be happy. That's it. Every person just wants to be happy. All I'm looking for is my personal individual happiness. Now, sometimes my individual happiness is also connected to, let's say, my family. Sometimes it's connected to my neighbors. Sometimes it's connected to my community. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to me. I personally, individually, I want to be happy. And how it connects to religiosity is if religion can make me happy, then fine, I'll go after it. A lot of people ask, how come my kids are not interested? I tell them to pray, they're not really interested. I tell them to wear hijab, they don't really care. I tell them to read the Quran, they don't want to. All the Sharia, all the laws, recommendations, all this stuff, they're just not interested. What are we doing wrong? And the simple answer is that you never built a love for your kids. You made an obligation for them. You gave them consequences, but there was never a love built for them. And let's be honest, most of us, it's not like we're dying to pray to Allah. It's like, oh my God, I get so much enjoyment out of it. Well, let's be honest, we know that it's a struggle for a lot of us to wake up early in the morning, even though it's only 2 rakats. It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. To stop in the middle of the day, right? Dhuhr and Asr. We're tired after work, come back home, Maghrib and Isha. These are not things that a lot of us are doing out of pure love and enjoyment. There's many other things in our life that we actually enjoy, and we can tell the difference, right? If I play sports, I enjoy doing that. So even if I'm tired, I'll probably go and do it anyway. Or if I enjoy going to the gym, even if I'm tired, I'll wake up and I'll go and do it. If I play video games, it doesn't matter how tired I am, what other work I have to do. If it's time to game, it's time to game. That's it, because I enjoy it. So that becomes a priority for me. But deen and religion, all right, if it doesn't interfere with the rest of my life, then I'll get around to it. All right, let me finish all my other real parts of life, and then I'll get to the deen at the end of the day, if I can. That's the way we end up prioritizing things. Why? Because individual happiness is our actual goal, right? That's what the dunya wants to provide. The dunya, this material world, is just saying, look, this place, this physical place is just about what? Fun, happiness, enjoyment, leisure activities, or if we're putting it simply, hobbies, right? Even people who end up having to go to work, right? 9 to 5s or whatever, businesses, whatever we all do. All of this that we're doing is what? I'm earning enough just so that I can buy my way to some level of happiness, right? I just want to earn this money because the work is not giving me joy, really. It's because it's giving me the opportunity, the material that I need, this money, this income. It's letting me go and buy things that I'll enjoy. Go to places that I enjoy, go on vacation or ziyarah, whatever. It lets me go and visit people. It lets me go and, again, buy games. Go spend on things that if I didn't have a job, I wouldn't be able to do. Or if I enjoy fishing, I need money to go and do that, so I need this money to go enjoy it. So this hobby or that sense of fun and enjoyment, that's what we're really after, right? Islam, right? It's not a hobby for us. It's a work for us. That's why for a lot of us, what? Islam is work, so we're doing it just so that we can get, right? Jannah is what I'm looking for because that's supposed to give me some sense of happiness and enjoyment and fun. If Jannah, if heaven wasn't in the picture, how many of us would bother with the religion? Meaning, if heaven and hell were not in the picture, if God just basically said, look, do whatever you want, forget it. There's no judgment afterwards. You can do it if you want to. It might make me happy if you do it, but if you don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. I'll tell you, I'm not going to pray then. Like, what's in it for me? Right? As the Imams have said, we're businessmen at the end of the day, right? That, I want to trade with Allah. Allah, you show me if I do this for you, what are you going to give me? I want to have fun. I want to enjoy. I want pleasure. So Allah, if you're going to promise me infinite, eternal pleasure, then fine. I'll wake up early in the morning. I'll do this. I'll try to control what I eat. I'll try to control what I drink. I'll try to control how I speak and think and all these other things. But you better make sure you give this, infinite paradise to me at the end of the day. Otherwise, why would I bother? Right? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, I want to explain this word hobby a little bit. Now, this hopefully we don't want to overcomplicate it, but you know how in Islamic discourses, whenever an alim wants to open up a concept, whether it's a word used in the Quran or a word used by one of the ma'sumin alayhim salam, what happens is they'll take a word like taqwa or again like hub, mawadda, Jannah, any concept that we've heard in Arabic, and what do a lot of scholars do? They say, let's take that, let's open it up, let's go to its root meaning, and we'll see what kind of depth we can get from that. So this is something that's normal in Arabic. Even in a lot of Eastern languages, the same thing is done, right? Whether it's Urdu, Farsi, Turkish, many other languages, is they have this sort of idea of etymology, of going back to a root, opening it up, and you see what the essential meaning of a word is, and it gives you more flavor and more depth to the way that it's being used right now. Now, interestingly, you can do the same thing with English, right? English is not compared to other languages, it's pretty new. And English has borrowed a lot from other languages, right? From Latin, from French, from Arabic a lot of times, from Farsi, right? People don't know this, but a lot of these words are coming from multiple languages. Like, for example, when they say paradise, does anybody know where that comes from? Paradise comes from paradis in Farsi. Paradis comes from Arabic. What word is that linked to in Arabic? Another word or type of Jannah, which is Jannatul Firdaus. Firdaus from Arabic goes to Paradis in Farsi, or some say it's actually the other way around. That went from Farsi to Arabic. I don't want to trigger anybody here, but whatever way it is, eventually it makes its way into English as paradise, right? And there's many other examples of this. Anyway, okay. You can do this with a lot of words. A word like hobby, which right now we just understand as a leisure activity, a sense of fun and enjoyment, that's it. But there's actually more to it. So what exactly is a hobby? In order to get a better understanding, we have to open up that concept a little bit more. Okay, hobby comes from the word hobby horse. Anybody know what that means? No. Anytime I've asked this, not a single person has ever known, because it's a really outdated term. When I explain it and describe it, then you'll have an exact idea of what I'm talking about. So a hobby horse is a type of toy that still exists. Some kids play with it. Some parents still buy it for their kids, but it's not usually like the first thing that parents are going to buy. So what is a hobby horse? What kind of toy is it? That's a different example, but it's similar to that one, yeah. So a hobby horse generally is what? It's a stick. Yeah. It's close. Some people describe that one, the rocking horse, like that too, but it's a stick. It's usually got reins on it sometimes, and then the head of a horse. That's it. It's a pretend horse. That's all it is. So parents would buy this for their kids. Kids would grab it and they'd run around the house or run in circles pretending like they're riding on a horse. That was known as a hobby horse. That's it. Now, okay, so how do you get a word like hobby horse, the stick with a horse's head, or a fake horse's head, not a real horse's head, obviously. How do you get from that and go to hobby, which is the sense of leisure, pleasure, enjoyment? How do you get that? Well, we have to go a bit deeper. So we've got two different types of horses. We got a real horse, and then we got a pretend kiddie toy horse. Now, what's the difference? It should be obvious, but we need to explain it, right? Just so we're on the same page. If I want to go from point A to point B, if, let's say, for example, we were living in some other society or centuries ago, where the main mode of transportation would have been horses. So let's say after the program's done, I bid you all salam, I'm time to go. I jump on my horse, and then I ride off into the sunset. That would be normal, right? Like, okay, that makes sense. That's what people do. They go off on a horse, for example. So you wouldn't think anything of it. But now let's just say, same example, right? We're existing a couple centuries ago, program's finished, and then afterwards we're all outside, everybody's ready to leave, and then I grab a stick with a fake horse's head on it, I grab it, say, all right guys, I'll see you later, and I start galloping around everywhere. You would say, where do you find this crazy guy come and speak in our community, right? Like, what's wrong with him? You would think that my sense of reality is off. Like, that toy is meant to just mess around with. It's meant for amusement and play. It's not meant to get from point A to point B. A real horse is functional. It has an objective behind it. A toy doesn't. So if a kid is on this stick, running in circles, saying that, oh, I'm running around, I'm in Karbala, I'm doing this, or I'm with Imam Hussein, and they're pretending like this, you and I, we don't bat an eye. Because it makes sense, because they're living in a pretend world. Okay, that's fine. An adult does it, we say something's wrong with them. They can't be thinking like this. They need to be doing something with objective and with purpose, something functional. This is the exact same way that Allah has described the dunya in the Quran as well too. See, a hobby horse is what? Is just this toy with no real objective. Nothing other than what? What's the only objective actually is just to have fun. Short-term fun. No objective, no function, no purpose. You're just running in a circle, that's all you're doing. It's not going to help you out, just give you that short-term pleasure, that's it. A real horse will actually, I mean, you can enjoy, obviously, if you enjoy riding horses, that's fine, but it actually has a function and an objective behind it as well too. So you can use that for fun and for higher purposes as well, for transportation, for example. So the word hobby then is what? It's something that is leisure, it's fun, because what? It doesn't have any higher purpose. It's just short-term pleasure, and that's all it is. I don't want any higher objective. I don't want to think about long-term, I just want to have fun, and that's it. This short-term thinking, call it dopamine, whatever you want to call it. That's what it is. Now, again, we could go through over about a dozen ayat in the Quran which describe the dunya, which I'm sure many of you are already more than well aware of. But all we need to do is remind ourselves of the way that Allah describes the Quran using these very similar terms. Right? So for example, in Surah Ankabut, ayah 45, I believe, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. The life of this world, the life of this dunya, is nothing except for two things, lahu and la'ib. Lahu means what? Anything that diverts and distracts. Anything that takes you away from your actual purpose and your objective. And la'ib is what? It's sport, game, amusement, fun. Allah is saying over and over and over again, what is this place? What is the life of this place? What is the goal, the purpose? What is the system of this place? It's running around in circles. People think that they're going from point A to point B, but they're not. They're just running around and around and around. They're not doing anything. They're not accomplishing anything. So they can share whatever they want on LinkedIn. They can share all their stuff on their socials, do whatever they want about the dunya, but it's nothing. There's nothing higher about that. There's no purpose beyond it. It's just them running around in circles, and everybody else who's also living in the fantasy world saying that, oh wow, that's an amazing circle you just made. They're all living this pretend life. Now this is where our understanding comes in. Where do we fit into this picture? Because we're surrounded by people like this. Right? There's one way in the riwayat that there are two different groups that are described. There's Ahlullah and Ahlul Dunya. There are people of Allah, people who have been sent down by Allah, from Allah, belonging to Him, connected to Him, and then people who are connected to this place, this earth, the physical plane. So why describe it like this, and what does it do with us? Let's recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before that, let me just make a disclaimer in case something gets lost in translation. We're allowed to have fun, by the way. You can have hobbies, you can enjoy yourself. You want to play games, and your parents say it's okay, go right ahead. I'm a gamer too, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily. You can have, enjoy yourself, sports, hobbies, everything's fine, right? But as we'll explain in a little bit, there's an issue of when a higher objective, a higher purpose is taken out of it. That's where the problem becomes. Okay, so now, where do we fall in line when it comes to this distinction of these two different types of groups and people? Well, we started by talking about what? The idea of identity, right? That we feel sometimes that we're caught between people who are themselves suffering from an identity crisis, and then in turn we suffer from it as well too. So why is that happening? So in order to explain it a little bit, I want to give an analogy. Hopefully it'll make sense. It'll make sense more to people who understand the mythology behind certain superheroes and Marvel DC characters. And if you don't understand any of it, then it's okay. I'll give another example in a few minutes. But hopefully this one makes sense, because I think, a lot of these movie writers, these comic book authors, they don't just write these things with zero philosophy in mind. They have specific ideas they're trying to get across to people, and that's why they write these things in their comics, put them in movies, music, things like that. Anyway, okay. In superhero and supervillain, or just comic book mythology, there's this idea of having your true identity and then having an alter ego, right? Every hero, every villain has this. They have who they really are. When they wake up, this is who they are. And then they have an alter ego where they have to put on a costume. They take on a different code name or secret name, whatever, their superhero name or their supervillain name, and they're that person for some amount of time out in public. But then when they come back and they go to sleep, the costume is gone, that alter ego is gone, and they're back to who they were born as, right? So as an example, true identity, for example, is Peter Parker. What's the alter ego? Spider-Man, right? One example. Okay, let's go the other way around. Alter ego, Iron Man. True identity? Tony Stark, okay. Now, if it was up to me and we had the time, I'd do like 15 more examples, but we don't have that much time. So it's the same thing, right? Everybody has their identity, and then this costume with the secondary alter ego that they have. And the same thing happens with villains too, right? There's only one exception to this rule. One character that exists that everything's actually flipped for them. Their identity and their ego, alter ego, is actually flipped. Anybody want to take a guess who that is? Superman. Ahsant. Very good. Superman. So technically there's two. Technically you can put Batman in here as well, but that requires a special tafsir that we don't have time for, so I'll have to save that for another night, right? Okay. So how is Superman, an exception to the rule? Well, who is he born as? Is he born as Clark Kent? No, who is he? Kal-El, right? He's an alien from Krypton. That's who he really is. He's sent down here. Again, I can't give you the whole tariq and history, obviously. You guys can read this on your own. But most of us know, baby, alien, sent down. Powers, him being superpowered, that's the normal thing for him being on Earth, right? That's his normal identity. That costume that he wears, according to most iterations, is what he was, that red cape is his blanket that he was put in. The S, it's not an S, it's a Kryptonian symbol, according to at least the Snyder version, is what? It's a symbol, it's a Kryptonian letter in the Kryptonian alphabet, meaning hope, for example, right? So it has nothing to do with Earth. That's his real identity. So what is the alter ego? What's the fake version? Clark Kent. That's who he has to pretend to be. That's not really who he is. He has to pretend to put on glasses and wear a suit and go to work and have friends. That's not who he really is. Who he really is this person with powers that goes around and fights bad guys and does all that stuff, right? So okay, how does this relate to us? Well, most of you might know, depending on if you've read the comics or seen the cartoons or even seen the movies. They describe his journey the same way. That when he's younger and he first finds out about his powers, what happens? Right? He learns about it typically, some say middle school, some say high school, whenever, right? And when he does he immediately say, oh man, this is awesome, I've got powers and now I'm going to go save the world? No, he doesn't. He freaks out, he gets scared, and he says, I don't like this. I don't want to be different. Why can't I just be normal like everybody else? I just want to have friends and just be a normal human. I don't like the fact that I'm an alien, all of this stuff, right? He rejected his actual purpose and his goal. And then, with a little bit of effort and after going to the Fortress of Solitude and all this other stuff, then he learns what his actual true purpose and his goal is to be a light and a hope for mankind, right? That was the idea. Then he flips everything, right? That's his turning point. He flips everything around. He says, okay, Kal-El, or Superman, is who I really am. Clark now has to be the alter ego. So when that identity change and realization changes in him, he flips everything around. So how does it flip around? Okay, so what is Clark Kent's job? He's a reporter, journalist, right? Works for the Daily Planet. Now, why does he do that? Does he do it because he read a book when he was younger? He's like, oh man, I can't wait to grow up and be a reporter. Where his parents, hounding him, said, you better be a reporter when you grow up. No, none of this. Because his main identity is not Clark, it's Superman. He says, look, I need to figure out a position, a job that'll serve me as Superman. If I pick something that's going to take up all my time, that's going to put me on the map, then people will notice me, and I can't just run out whenever I want. But if I take a job in a big, corporation like the Daily Planet, I'll be a small person in this huge building, multi-floors. Nobody will notice who I am. I'll be a tiny little reporter, and specifically he does international work too, right? Not just local, he does international too. Why? Because now, if he has to go report on something halfway across the world, now he's got an excuse to disappear for weeks or months at a time, right? So he can go around, do a Superman thing, and nobody else they're none the wiser. He picks a job that specifically serves his higher purpose. Why? Because he had an identity flip. He understood that Clark is not who I really am. I don't need to have friends. I don't need to live this life and go out and do all this stuff. My purpose is Superman, to save. That's what I have to do. Everything else I do in my alter ego life, my fake life, needs to serve that purpose. If not, it's going to get in the way. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He doesn't hang out, go to parties with it. He doesn't do stuff like that. He's just making sure whatever I do, I keep a minimal footprint in the earth so that I can go do what I have to do. Now, what does it have to do with us? For us, you and I suffer the exact same problem as him. Our alter ego and our identity are flipped. We think that we're born and raised and this is where we're from. We're earthlings, we're humans, we're from so-and-so country, so-and-so state, I'm from Houston or whatever it is. I go to work, I go to school, I do all this stuff. And then yes, if I get around to it, maybe I'll get to the religious stuff or the deen or to Allah, if it fits my schedule. That's my alter ego. That's not my real version. So for a lot of us, it's flipped. If we had a proper sense of identity, then everything would work the other way around. Is that I would truly see myself as a representative, as somebody divinely appointed by Allah. Not in the sense that I'm a prophet or an imam or anything like that, no. But Allah has sent all of Bani Adam, all of us, as what? As khulafa. We are all meant to be a khalifa on this place. To be a light for everybody else, to show them our akhlaq, to show them the light of the Ahlul Bayt. That's what our job is. But what's the thing? Is that everybody else around us doesn't understand this yet. So we have to kind of put on these glasses and be like Clark for a little bit. But this earth, human, dunyawi, material version of ourselves, this is the fake version. This is the alter ego. This is not who we really are. That Islamic version of us, the mu'min, the Muslim, the Shia, whatever you want to say, that's the real version of us. And until we have that identity switch, until we actually flip that thing around, then everything will serve the dunya and the dunya's purpose rather than the akhirah and getting us closer to Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As an example, think about how many of us figure out, those of us who have already or maybe are in college or thinking about going to college, who have picked majors, whatever, or those who have already gone into the workforce, picked their job. What reason did most of us end up doing any of that? It was sometimes because our parents pushed us into something. You'll be successful if you do this, right? Or I like computers, so I'm going to go into computer programming, for example. Or I'm going to do this job because this will make me successful in life, right? That's the way we were thinking. Which, it's not haram to think like that. It's not forbidden, but it's dunyawi. It is a materialistic way of looking at things. Had we put deen, Allah, the Quran, and the Imam first, we would have asked questions, or we would have told our kids things like, as long as you put in effort, it doesn't really matter what you do. But what you and I need to think about is how can you serve the Imam? What role can you actually fill when the Imam comes back? Does the Imam need, for example, 15 different cardiologists? I don't think so. Right? Does he need 100 people in economics? Well, at least one, but not 100. Does he need a lot of lawyers? Well, if ICE goes after him, then there'll definitely need at least 1 or 2 lawyers, right? How many people are ready to be a mechanic for the Imam, a carpenter for the Imam, an electrician for the Imam, right? A farmer for the Imam, a shepherd for the Imam. A lot of these simple hands-on things, a lot of us, we don't have the skill sets for that, right? These are basic things. And maybe that's not what I like, but that's what the Imam might require. I'm just giving you examples. I'm not saying that that's definitely what you and I should do, but it's a framework. It's a different way of thinking about things. What exactly would serve the mission of the Imam right now? What would actually help him out? And if I don't know, because a lot of us, it's tough. We can't just guess it. I should go ask ulama. Let me get some advice and think about what makes sense. Or if I don't want to, make it a bit more practical, what does my community need right now? This community obviously needs something. They need some sort of job to help out. In a lot of communities that I've been to, maybe not over here, but many communities, they need people who can help with, let's say, audio-visual stuff. And usually people will volunteer, they'll watch a few YouTube videos and they'll do it. And alhamdulillah, that works. But sometimes, especially for the bigger places, they need professionals, right? To adjust sound, lighting, all these kind of things. Sometimes you can't really learn all that from a YouTube video. You need to spend some time doing it. So maybe somebody studying that might be beneficial. Is there going to be like 6 figures a year doing that? Maybe not. but at least you'll be serving a higher purpose. At least you'll know that Allah, or Imam, I'm trying to do what my community needs. That's what I'm going after. Or maybe even not the community, my own family might need a certain role there that hasn't been filled yet, right? So thinking in that way is a way of flipping around our identity. Now, if that analogy didn't work, I'm going to give one more analogy, but then I'm going to be cautious of time too. I'm going to end soon, and just a short masayib as well. Think about the idea of when police officers or intelligence officers, they go undercover, right? Everybody does it. Whether it's the police, FBI, CIA, MI5, MI6, Mossad, everybody, they have this idea of going undercover, right? So what do? When they want to infiltrate a gang, cartel, mafia, something like that, what do? In order to be a part of them, they can't obviously come and say, oh, I'm a police officer that's undercover. They can't do that. So they have to what? They have to pretend. They have to act as if. They have to think like a criminal. They have to speak like a criminal. They have to behave like a criminal, obviously. They have to pretend like they're one of them. They have to be amongst them for a long time to build that trust. But what happens? Sometimes what happens, and they've shown this in some movies, and this happens in real life, is that this issue happens too long. They stay undercover for way too long. Right? There's movies and stuff about this idea of going in too deep. And they're stuck there. They start building friendships with their bosses, the mafia boss, or their fellow gang members, whatever it is, and then their hearts start getting attached to them. And then what happens is that they leave behind their actual goal, which is to stop them, to stop this gang or criminal organization, and they become one of them. Right? This is not an exceptional case. This happens, unfortunately. You and I, that's the same issue for a lot of us too. We talked about Ahlullah and Ahlul Ard. People of Allah and the people of the dunya, materialistic, worldly people. You and I, we claim that, no, I'm from Allah, right? I'm sent down. I know where I came from. I know that I'm going to be judged after this. My actions will determine where I go. We all know this. And we know that we're a minority too. We're surrounded by people who don't have the same beliefs as us. And we're not just a minority, we're a minority within a minority within a minority within a minority, right? To be religious in this society, we're already a minority. To be practicing among religious people is another minority. To be a Muslim among monotheists is a minority. To be a lover and follower of the Ahlul Bayt among them is another minority, right? So you keep going, and we're just a small little group. So we are deep, deep undercover, right? So what happens, we're surrounded by people who don't share the same ideas as us. When they go to school, they have a different idea in mind. They're worried about prom and their dresses and dating and all this other stuff. They're worried about money and their life and going on vacation. This is what they're worried about. And then we start hearing this. We want to be like them sometimes and assimilate and adapt and adopt and all this. So we start thinking like them. We start talking like them. We act like them. And then what happens? We forget what we're really here for. And we become one of them. We go from Ahlullah to Ahlul Ard. And this happens over and over again. So much so that we don't have and know our own Islamic economic system. We just grab onto capitalism. We don't have our own Islamic political system. We just grab onto democracy or something else. Everything that Islam has something to say on, we just grab from somebody else and say, no, let's take that because that's who we're around. When Islam has something to say, if we say that it's a complete, perfect way of life, Islam has something to say about every single subject. Nutrition, health, wealth, how to sleep, even going to the bathroom, right? Yeah, everything is there. We don't need any outsider to tell us what to do, how to act, because we have the system dedicated for us, right? But we forget that. Sometimes we don't spend time learning and researching and all this, so we get lost in everybody else's system. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One final point, and then we'll end with a short masayib. Now, Allah obviously made us. He sent us here, so we can kind of say, like, Allah, didn't you know this was going to happen? That you're going to send us over here? That we're going to be undercover, so to speak? We'll be surrounded by people who are going to be talking about dunya world, and physical stuff, empirical stuff. They'll be talking about this all the time. You and I, we're going to forget you. We're going to forget Allah, and we do. We're going to forget your teachings and your hidayah and your guidance and all of this, and we do. So Allah, isn't it kind of on you to remind us? And Allah says, obviously, yeah. I'll give you reminders, or what we call dhikr or adhkar. I'll give you reminders all throughout your life. There are some that Allah says, I will obligate for you, that you have to do. This is the bare minimum, that 5 times a day, you just move up and down in this way, recite some things in Arabic, and that'll be your basic reminders. So we have salah, basic reminder of where we come from, where we're going. But beyond that, we have reminders in every single moment of our life. When we wake up, there's a specific dua and a recommended thing to recite, isn't there? Once you get up, now let's say you decide to go to the bathroom. When you step into the bathroom, we step in with left foot, right? To the bathroom. That's a recommendation. That's a reminder for us. When we're in the bathroom, there's a specific dua to recite before we take care of our business there. After we're done, there's another dua to recite there too. Let's say we decide to wash our hands. There's another dua to recite. Let's say you decide to now, because you lost your wudu, you may make wudu now, which is a good practice to have every time you use the bathroom. There's a dua to recite before you make wudu. When you look at the water, when you touch the water, every single motion in wudu, there's another reminder there. When you're done with wudu, another reminder. You step out of the bathroom, you step out with the right foot. That's another reminder. I go and I eat food. We all have been taught to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before eating. What is that? It's a reminder. But there's short du'as before food. There's a dua to recite after we eat. Whenever we travel somewhere, we get in the car, many of us maybe are in the habit and practice of reciting this short dua safar, right? This traveling dua. There's reminders that Allah has put in our lives. Every single situation has some sort of reminder. But what is the point if these reminders have little to no meaning for me? Somebody asked me a while ago, they say, I'm afraid of flying. I can't go on planes. I get anxious, I can't handle it. Do you have anything special that I can do or recite or pray or something? I said, when you get on the plane, do you recite anything? They say, yeah, I recite the dua safar. I was like, okay, do you know what it means? No. I was like, you have that cure in your hand and you're just not paying attention to it. It's as if you're looking at it and they're kind of tossing it away. Read the translation of it, get some understanding, and you'll see what Allah's trying to remind you of, and maybe that'll take away your anxiety. Or maybe some of us wake up and we have this kind of negative feeling about our life, right? Maybe because we don't like our job or something. That dua that we recite when we wake up is a reminder about the goodness and the positive stuff in our life. All these other people, they have these mantras and other things that they recite. We have our own stuff that gives us a reminder of life and death. There's other examples too, but I don't want to kind of go on and drag on the conversation. But all of this dhikr and adhkar is what? All of this is because Allah knows that you and I will forget. We'll forget Him. We'll forget our purpose. We forget our goal. We forget everything. So Allah says, all these little reminders are there for you so that we figure out and remind ourselves where we came from, what we do while we're here, and where do we go after this. If only we were to pay attention to this kind of stuff, right? And maybe if we do that, even for things that might be dunyawi, so to speak, hobbies. I know it might sound strange, but let's say, okay, I decide to watch a movie or a TV show or play a game or whatever, or I'm about to play sports. What's so strange about me saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before I start? It seems weird to do so, but why? Wouldn't it be weirder to not bring Allah into that? Wouldn't that be strange? Why am I keeping Allah out of this? Why wouldn't I say that, Allah, you told me, Allah, through the imams, that it's recommended for me to engage in leisure activity, to have fun as long as it's halal and it's allowed, so I'm doing this because you told me to. And I'm trying to remember you as I do this. Hopefully I keep my behavior in check, I don't do anything or look at anything wrong or say anything wrong, and that I remember you throughout too. It seems strange, but why wouldn't we do something like that? Instead of me just sitting down and watching or playing for an hour, 2 or 3 hours, I keep him just like I would when I was eating. If I'm doing this when I'm playing or watching or playing a sport or driving, whatever it is, then maybe now I can turn every single part of my life into some type of ibadah and worship. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But of course, there are some individuals that no matter how many reminders that they were given, no matter, even though they had the Prophet in front of them, that Allah had blessed them and gifted them with Rasulullah in their lives, the people of the past, you see that they still decided to betray him over and over again. To his face, they would claim that Sami'na wa ata'na, we hear, we obey. But in the back of their minds, they were plotting, they were planning, figuring out ways that they can seize power after he had passed away. So many occasions where the Prophet had sent people out to go for battle, ordered them to go here, to deliver this, to send a message here. And so many of them, even at Hudaybiyah, they said, we're not even sure if you're a prophet anymore. This is the way that people used to speak to our Rasul. So much so that 3 days before he becomes shaheed and passes away, 3 days now that he is still dealing with pain. He's nearing towards the end of his life, and although he had mentioned the name of Imam Ali over and over and over again, still he said, I want to make sure that you do not get lost after I pass away. give me something to write on, something to write with. Let me write down something for you so that you don't get misguided after this. And people in that gathering had the nerve to say, he's talking crazy, he's talking nonsense. We have the Quran, that's enough for us. This is how they treated the Prophet. So much so that it angered and upset the Prophet. People always ask, like, okay, why? If only he wrote it down, then things would have been different. No. He's somebody with wisdom. He knows better that if they won't even let me write something down, even if I were, they're going to change it. They're going to do something with it. So what's the point? And after all this betrayal, after all this khiyana, you see in the Quran over and over again, Allah still has to tell the Prophet, La tahzun, don't worry, don't grieve over them. Allah says, all your job is to give them the message. You're just a Rasul. But if their hearts don't change, then you have nothing to do with that. I will take them to task for abusing you and disobeying you. And in these final moments, on a night like this, where Rasulullah is now with his closest loved ones, where perhaps Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are in the room, they're watching as Sayyidah Fatima is there crying, seeing her father in this state, as they see that the head of Rasulullah is in the lap of Imam Ali. And as they are all waiting, seeing if they can delay his death for just a few moments so they can spend a bit more time with Rasulullah. And as this time gets nearer and nearer, there's many different things that are said and recited to Rasulullah. Some say that when he begins to pass, Sayyidah Fatima began to cry out, saying, Ya Allah, give us more time with our Rasul. Give me more time with my father. You are taking him away and he'll be closer to you, but he'll be farther away from me. And they say, according to some narrations, that when Fatima was crying near Rasulullah and he felt the sadness of his daughter, how can any father see his child in such a state? That when this happened, when he awoke, seeing his daughter in this state, he whispered something to her that made her smile. And some riwayat say that when people asked her afterwards, what did he say to you that make you smile after this? She said that my father told me that even though I'm leaving now, very soon you will be the first one to come and meet me very, very soon. Some speakers, some ulama, some narrators mention that it is around this time where there were knocks on the door of the Ahlul Bayt. And as this was a time for only the family to be with the Rasul, they kept telling this person knocking that, please leave us. This is the time for the family only. The companions had their chance. Now we want to spend time with our father, with our grandfather. Please leave us. But this person kept knocking over and over and over again. And Sayyidah Fatima, they say, became annoyed at this. And when Rasulullah, in and out of consciousness, saw that Sayyidah Fatima was annoyed, he had asked her, what troubles you now? What is happening? And she said, Abata, father, Baba, we keep telling them to leave us be now, that everybody has had their chance to say their goodbye, and we want to just be in peace with you now, to have some comfort in your final moments, but they keep coming and knocking over and over again. They don't listen to our request. And Rasulullah said to her, Oh Fatima, oh my beautiful daughter, this one that is knocking is not someone that normally knocks on doors. This one who is coming and knocking is none other than Malik al-Maut and the angel of death himself. He has been coming over and over again because it is my time now to go back to my Rabb and back to my master and my nurturer. But because of the respect and honor that even the angel of death has for you, he refuses to enter unless you give permission. So please do not delay my time to meet my Rabb and allow him to come in. And we hear this story and we see the amount of respect that is shown to Fatima even by the angel of death. But we would say in just a few short months, very soon, so-called friends, companions of Rasulullah will come to the house of the Ahlul Bayt. They will threaten the daughter of Rasulullah. They will threaten to burn down the house of Rasulullah. They will push down the door on the daughter of Rasulullah. They will cause her pain and they will cause her to lose her son Muhsin in this state. They will burn this house down around her. They will drag Imam Ali chained, tied in ropes in the streets, just like eventually his daughter Zainab will be carried through the streets as well in ropes. ألا لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.